Okay, here we go. This is the second session of our class on Sefer Shoftim, titled Chieftains, Warlords, and Terrorists Beyond Judges. Okay, so last time we learned the first two chapters, the introductory prakim to the book that talk about the setting, how the tribes of Bnei Israel were starting to lose their connection to each other. Each was going their own way in conquering their own territory. And we saw the description of one of the main recurring themes of the book of Judges, which is the cycle of the people sin. There's some kind of punishment, which usually involves oppression by neighboring nations. Then the people are in pain, they cry out, they might repent. Afterwards, some kind of leader arises to rescue them. Things are good for a while, and then they start sinning again, and the whole cycle goes around. Are there any questions, review questions about that? Are we ready to keep going? Yeah? Okay. Okay, so if you open up your Tanachim to Sefer Shoftim, chapter 3.
I don't know what's the chapter.
Huh?
Page.
Page 518.
Okay.
Some of these Tanachs actually have an unfortunate typo at the top on the title, where it should have the name of the book there. It only has the first two letters of it, so it says Sho instead of Shoftim.
Yeah.
But okay, so Mark Migdal.
Yes.
Migdal.
Yes.
Would you like to read the first few verses?
Yes.
Because this also addresses a question that you were asking before class.
Oh, perfect. These are the nations that the Lord left so that he might test by them all the Israelites who had not known any of the wars of Canaan, so that succeeding generations of Israelites might be made to experience war. But only those who had not known the former wars, the five principalities of the Philistines,
Philistines,
PH, Plishtim, and all the Canaanites, Sidonians, and Hivites, who inhabited the hill country of the Lebanon from Mount Baal Hermon to Lebo Hamath. These served as a means of testing Israel to learn whether they would obey the commandments which the Lord had enjoined upon their fathers through Moses.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
I'm having trouble finding it in this.
Okay, top of that page, I think.
Come on.
Is that it?
Check that.
Okay,
Yeah.
then that's why I had trouble finding it. Thank you.
So now we're
They hid it in plain sight.
we're at the next paragraph.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we're discussing that first section, the first paragraph up there. Okay, so here we're given two theological reasons why there are still Canaanites living in the land. Because the people were supposed to come in, Bnei Israel were supposed to come in with Joshua, with Yoshua, conquer the land, set up a new society, and that would be it. But as we saw last time, there are still groups and pockets of the Canaanite nations living there, who they are interacting with, sometimes on a military level and sometimes on a non-military level. And here, at the beginning of Parak Gimel, we actually have two theological explanations of why they're still around. So, what are they? What did it say? What does it mean?
One is they're not familiar with the previous wars and the marching orders to eradicate these people who are living there in their stead.
Okay. So Bnei Israel, the new generations aren't familiar with war. They need people to fight. The people they were supposed to fight, they didn't fight beforehand. So now, whoever's left is there.
Not so interested.
Right. Okay. And the other one?
See if they're going to obey God this time.
Right. Because they have their instructions of don't get too close to these idolaters who do horrible things. Don't become like them. And so it actually describes it as a test to see if the Israelites would keep the mitzvot or go astray.
So all these other nations are basically pawns for God in this sense, right?
That does seem to be how they're being described.
It feels like it. I mean,
Yeah.
It feels like we're gonna, I'm gonna have these guys around here just to see if.
Well,
Yeah.
they're idolaters,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
God abhors
Yeah, so- But
idolaters.
he's using them. He's using them.
So they're less than human.
Yeah.
I don't know if I would go that far, though. Because if they're less than human, they would probably not be considered liable for their actions.
Be careful, I might be one of them.
They wouldn't be considered liable
Check
for their
with Bal.
actions.
I mean,
They
like,
don't consider themselves liable for their actions.
they don't, but God seems to consider them liable. Which is why God says, okay, these people are so bad that you should just get rid of them.
But in a way, it seems like God's saying they're disposable. I mean, we can use them for you can have war with these people
And wipe them out.
and wipe them out. They're disposable. I mean, in a way, that's kind of weird, isn't it? I mean,
No, it's definitely weird, especially from our contemporary ideas
Yeah.
about war
Genocide.
and how you treat
Well, it's that-
people.
and God's-
It's genocide, right?
God's vantage point.
It's God's
Right.
dualistic nature of love and war. He's the warring God of the desert, or he's the loving God that we have today.
Do you actually know when these idolaters actually came into existence?
You mean the Canaanite nation specifically, or idolatry in general?
In general.
So there's all kinds of theories about that. There are anthropological and historical theories, and there's also rabbinic midrashic theories that actually date the invention of idolatry to the time of Enosh, Adam and Chava's grandson. And
Okay, so after the Jews.
No, long before.
Long before the Jews.
Yeah, long before.
Abraham was born to idolaters
So
on
if
a
the
bell.
idolaters started at the time, I just kind of figured everybody was an idolater until Abraham. But
Okay.
if you're saying they started at Enosh,
Right.
so are they saying that Adam and Chava were monotheistic?
Yeah, because
Oh, yeah.
because they're
they were
described as talking to God,
That's true.
so you would assume that they
Yeah.
know who they're talking to.
Okay.
But the flood wipes them all out, and then we start anew,
Right.
right? So
Right.
it's
Yeah, but Noah talked
Very good
about
point.
it too.
Right. So
Well,
Noah
that's why
talks to God.
and it's post Noah,
Right.
where the idolaters bring back up.
Oh, that's a very good point. I don't remember seeing any specific explanation of how idolatry reoccurs after Noah.
Abraham's father is an idol seller.
Right, but he doesn't invent it. But he doesn't invent it.
No.
There's already a culture of
Yeah,
idolatry
it's
by
like a used
Terach's
car
time.
market.
Right.
He's a used car salesman.
Right, that's a good question. I'm going to try and do some research and figure out if there are any explanations for how idolatry reoccurs after Noah. Yeah.
Rabbi, what I don't understand is this is describing God as being warlike,
Right.
and yet when we say the Shema Yisrael, we're saying the God loves us. So therefore, we should love God the way
Right.
He loves us.
Okay.
And how can I look at someone who's warlike
Okay.
as someone who is not so loving.
What if they're defending their family against
Yeah,
evil?
I can
doers?
appreciate that, but
Okay.
this is but they're not defending. We are taking the offensive.
Right. So according to the perspective of Tanakh, idolatry, especially as practiced by the Canaanites, is so bad and so horrible that it and everything and everyone associated with it needs to be gotten rid of.
It's evil. God does not.
It's evil. Right.
Cleaned from the land.
Right.
They did human sacrifice, and it's not just.
So that's it. I mean, just like human beings have different ways that we interact with different things, there are things that we love and people who we are close to, and other things or ideas or people that we stay away from. So too, descriptions of, and philosophically in general, like the way we look at God, is that even if God is some kind of ultimate, unitary, singular entity, God still has to interact with a universe which is made up of lots of different stuff. Lots of different people who are doing all kinds of different things. And so God is also God is described as warlike in different parts of Tanakh, and as loving, and as loyal, and as demanding, and as judging. So that's all. It's all about how God is interacting with us and everything else that's around. So
It's good.
okay, so let's see what happens now. Now that we have these people who should have gotten rid of, but they're still around. Let's see how it keeps going. Okay, who else would like to read? We're now in Pasuk Hey, verse 5.
Right. So the Israelites settled amongst the Canaanites, Hittites, Amorites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites.
So these are all different Canaanite nations living in the land.
They took their daughters to wife. They gave their own daughters to their sons, and they worshipped their gods.
Which is exactly
What God warned them.
They did in chapter 1.
it's exactly what God warned them about.
Okay?
The Israelites did what was offensive to the Lord. They ignored the Lord their God and worshipped the Baalim and the Asherot. The Lord became incensed at Israel and surrendered them to King Cushan-Rishathaim of Aram Naharaim, and the Israelites were subject to Cushan-Rishathaim for 8 years.
Thank you. Okay, let's pause here. So we've now met our first villain. He has a very long, complicated name. Cushan-Rishathaim. If you are more familiar with Hebrew, and you look in the original here, in Pasuk 8 and 9, sorry, not 9, just 8, where it shows his name, Vaycharaf Hashem b'Yisrael v'yimkarim biyad Cushan-Rishathaim.
So he's.
Do you notice anything about the name Rishathaim?
Starts with Russia.
Okay, so it sounds twice. Sounds like twice. It's a double, like raglayim, pair of legs, or einayim, pair of eyes. And what did you say?
Russia.
Russia. Like
Doubly wicked.
evil, wicked.
An iron.
What?
But there's an iron in the middle. Is that what you do with the hay words in the middle?
No, but ayin is part of the root of the word wicked.
What does the word mean?
Okay.
So what's that? Rasha
Well, and
means
earlier,
evil.
if you look at the Hebrew,
Yeah.
when the
Yes,
Israelites did,
Yeah.
they, Ra. So there's a nice flow from him. They did the Ra, and then he was Rishathaim.
Ah.
They did it, and it came back on them twice.
Oh, very cool. Nice idea.
It's
Cool.
9. It's right over through.
Okay. Nice. Cool. Okay. Okay, so I brought you here on this handout a few commentaries about various verses that we're going to get to as we go through this chapter. So the first one is from Radak, one of the medieval commentators who was very big on grammar. It's one of the things he's known for. So he comments on the name Kushan Rishatayim, and the first thing he says is, Kachayashmo, such was his name. It's a weird name, sort of long, but okay, I guess that's what his name was. Ve'efshar, and it's possible, Ki Rishatayim Shemakom, or maybe Rishatayim is the name of a place, and his name is Kushan, and so Kushan Rishatayim just means Kushan of Rishatayim. And then there's another explanation that he brings from the Midrashim. Which suggests, what is Rishatayim? Like we already discussed, Rishatayim, it sounds like a double word, a pair, with the ayim ending. So Rishatayim would then mean a pair of evil deeds, or a pair of wickednesses. And what are they? After the two evil deeds which Aram did to Israel, the first by Bilam and the second by Kushan.
Would Kushan be related to Cush for Ethiopia?
Potentially, but
He's a doubly
not
nasty black dude. I
necessarily.
mean, you know.
No, that I don't think so. I think that's very unlikely.
So, explain
Yeah,
that.
I mean the name itself could be related to the place, but that I don't think that n ending would be there like that.
So explain that last point. What is it?
Okay, so two evil deeds which Aram did to Israel. So the second one is our story here, where Kushan Rishatayim, the king of Aram, is now oppressing the Israelites.
Okay. So Aram is a place.
Aram is a place, yes.
Okay.
And the first evil deed which the place Aram did to Israel was Bilam.
They hired Bilam.
They hired
Balak hired Bilam.
So Balak from Moab hired Bilam,
And his mule.
the cursing
Donkey.
prophet from Aram. This is in the Torah. Let's flip to see it. Let's flip to, okay, this is in Bamidbar, Balak. So the book of Bamidbar, Numbers, chapter 22, page 335. Page 335. Page 335. You all there? Okay, so it starts by saying, the Israelites then marched on and encamped in the steppes of Moab, across the Jordan from Jericho. So this is Bnei Israel on the the doorstep of the land of Canaan, about to cross the Jordan River, and they happen to be on the edge of the neighboring nation of Moab. Balak, the king of Moab, gets worried. His whole people get worried. And then, if we look down in verse 5 here, he sent messengers to Bilam, son of Beor, in Petor, which is by the Euphrates, in the land of his kinsfolk, to invite him, saying, "There is a people that came out of Egypt. It hides the earth from view, and it is settled next to me. Come then, put a curse upon this people for me, since they are too numerous for me. Perhaps I can thus defeat them and drive them out of the land. For I know that he whom you bless is blessed indeed, and he whom you curse is cursed." So Balak, king of Moab, worried about Bnei Israel camped on his doorstep, sends a message to this cursing prophet Bilam, son of Beor, up by the Euphrates River, which is the area of Aram Naharaim. And so this Midrash is saying, why is Kushan Rishatayim called Rishatayim? Two wickednesses? Because he's only the second one. He's the second time that someone from Aram has come to make trouble for the Israelites. And the first one was Bilam. But this isn't the first time, huh?
And we know that this is by Aram, because it really,
Yeah, not Balak. Bilaam is identified with the river Prat, the Euphrates, and Aram Naharaim, which is the name for where Kushan Rishatayim comes from, is Aram Naharaim because it's Naharaim. It's Aram of the two rivers. It's Mesopotamia. It's not down in like Baghdad, it's like up in the area of Syria, between the Euphrates and the Tigris.
Early ISIS.
I wouldn't go that far, but Aram has a long history. There's someone else who we know who was from Aram, who made a bit less trouble for Bnei Israel, although
Nimrod?
Who?
Nimrod?
No, not Nimrod. There were no Bnei Israel at the time of Nimrod, although there was Abraham. No, she was not. Isabel was not from Aram. She was from the Phoenician coast. It's someone who we make a big deal out of at the Seder. Someone who supposedly tried to
Lavan.
kill everybody. Lavan. Exactly. Lavan.
Sarah's brother.
Rivka's brother.
Rivka's brother?
Yeah, Rivka's brother.
Not Rivka's father?
he tried to kill
Rivka's brother?
Yeah, because their father was Betuel.
Okay.
Lavan tried to kill him.
Okay, so when Lavan chases down Yaakov, okay, so let's review. Let's review. Yaakov runs away from home. He's sent away by his parents in order to avoid Esav after he takes the birthright, and Esav is really angry.
Right.
So he goes up to Uncle Lavan in Haran, the city from where Abraham and Sarah originally moved to Canaan from. Goes back to Haran, where his mother came from. To work for his uncle Lavan. He falls in love with his cousin Rachel. Lavan says, okay, work for me and you can marry her. Instead, Lavan gives him the other daughter to marry and says, oh, you can keep on working for me if you really want to marry Rachel. So Yaakov ends up, after many years, married to Rachel and Leah and Bilhah and Zilpah and having all these kids. And he realizes at a certain point it's time to go home. So he sneaks out because he doesn't trust his tricky uncle.
And his wife steals the house
Right.
So what's
idols.
Tell me about the speckled
The whites?
So Lavan
Right.
was a Jew.
No, there are no Jews yet. Lavan is a member of Abraham's larger family,
Chaldean.
but Lavan is definitely not a follower of Abraham's faith,
He's a
and
no-
Lavan is not a descendant of Abraham. Lavan is a
he's a
cousin or nephew.
The thing I can't get out of my head is
Yeah?
the Jews. There were plenty of people around before the Jews.
Yeah.
These
So
aren't,
were
these
any of
aren't,
them,
these aren't
were any of
Jews.
them good?
These are,
Yeah.
these are Hebrews.
Lots of good people. Like
Mark, these
Noah.
aren't Jews, they're Hebrews. It's different.
Okay, so technically speaking, the term Jew only applies after the time of the Tanakh, after the first exile, when we go to Babylon and then come back to Israel and reconstitute Israelite society as the Judean province of the Persian Empire. So that's when the term Jew starts appearing. But before that, we're just Israelites. And as Israelites, we're named after Yaakov. So before Yaakov, when we're talking about like Yitzchak and Abraham and Sarah, so there's no real good word to describe them except maybe Hebrews. But a lot of times we call them Jews just as shorthand.
Because that's the way Abraham is described as an Iberu, right?
Right.
Descendant of
One who
Iberu.
crossed over.
Ivri,
Well,
right.
Maybe.
A Hebrew.
Yeah. Okay.
Iberu. He's
So.
descendant of Aber.
Hebrew is masculine. Shebrew is feminine.
Oh, ouch.
They have a higher authority.
That's why
Okay.
Beer is masculine. Hebrew.
He's described as
Right. I see.
Hebrew?
Ivri. Everyone's described as Ivri.
Hebrew.
Yeah. Okay, so if we look way far back in Tanakh, in the Torah, in the book of Bereshit, page 66, we are in Bereshit, chapter 31, near the end, verse 47. Let's start at 47. So Yaakov snuck away from Lavan with his whole family. Lavan rushes to catch up to them and catches up to them.
With his posse.
With his posse, good. Exactly. And they have a confrontation. It's very tense. They end up making peace, and they build a stone cairn as a symbol of their covenant that they're making, not to hurt each other. And in Pasuk 47, I'm just starting here because I like linguistics. So Lavan names it Yagar Sahaduta, and Yaakov calls it Gal-Ed, which are the same thing in Aramaic and Hebrew, because Lavan is from Aram, where they speak Aramaic.
We all spoke Aramaic.
Right, but later on. Once Aramaic became like the lingua franca of the whole Middle East. And so both of those names mean witness cairn. And they declare that this mound is a witness between them, so that they will treat each other well and not hurt each other. And then Lavan says in Pasuk 51, here is this mound, and here's the pillar which I have set up between you and me. This mound shall be witness, and this pillar shall be witness that I am not to cross to you past this mound, and that you are not to cross to me past this mound and this pillar with hostile intent. This was a peace treaty. Mm-hmm. He chased after him. He was angry. Yaakov was angry back. They shout at each other. They don't trust each other. And they say at the end, okay, we're building this pile of rocks as a symbol that neither of us can go across it in order to hurt the other one.
And Rachel still has the idols.
Right, Rachel still has the idols. But now what's happening, a few hundred years later, after Yaakov and his family have now become a whole nation of a number of tribes living in the land of Canaan with some of the Canaanites. So now Aram, Lavan's people, are violating the agreement. They're coming down and they're crossing
The pile of bricks.
the pile of stones
With bad intent.
with bad intent. Exactly. And this is the first villain who we have here. The first nation that's coming to oppress the people who deserve it because they're doing wrong things, as the book of Shoftim is explaining to us. But the first ones who are coming are this old enemy who shouldn't be our enemy in the first place.
Except he's a conquering king. They've come in and they've conquered the region,
Right.
And have taken the Israelites as their subjects.
True.
It's the crossroads. They do this a lot. Everybody comes in and conquers Israel.
Right. Right, but the first ones now, after we got there, is now Aram.
Because we didn't do the right thing in the first place.
Exactly. Okay, so let's go back to Shoftim.
What do you mean we didn't do it right?
5:18.
Thank God.
That's what we're reading here, Mark. That's we're supposed to go in, clean the place out of idolaters, get rid of all their stuff, and
Get rid of
take
the
the place
local
over and
gods.
do what God wants.
I
But we don't
understand
do
that.
that. We don't do that. We intermarry. We do all the things that God doesn't want us to do. We pick up their idols and we go to their cult sacrifices, and we're sacrificing our children. We're doing terrible things. We're doing
Right.
bad stuff.
Right.
God gets upset.
Well, that's why he left those people to teach us a lesson.
Right now, he's a vending machine god, and you do something wrong, and the vending machine gives you raspberries.
I like raspberries. Raspberries aren't bad. They taste good. Okay, so, sorry. Okay, so back in Shoftim, page 518. Okay, so Kushan Rishatayim
Shall I
of the
continue?
two wickednesses. Go ahead.
Israelites cried out to the Lord, like we have on our little board there.
Yep.
And the Lord raised a champion for the Israelites to deliver them, Othniel the Kenizzite, the younger kinsman of Caleb. The Spirit of the Lord descended upon him and became Israel's chieftain. He went out to war, and the Lord delivered King Cushan Rishatayim of Aram into his hands and prevailed over Cushan Rishatayim, and the land had peace for 40 years.
Okay, thank you. So our first villain, or our first hostile neighbor, is Aram, led by King Kushan Rishatayim. Our first hero, our first shofet, or judge, is this guy named
So it's Neil.
Otniel ben Kenaz, who should sound familiar.
Okay.
Flip back to the first chapter, to the top of page 514, verse 12.
Verse 12.
And Caleb announced, I will give my daughter Achsa in marriage to the man who attacks and captures Kiryat Sefer. His younger kinsman, Otniel ben Kenaz, captured it. And Caleb gave him his daughter Achsa in marriage. And then she says to her father, as we saw last time,
Yeah.
you gave me not very good land with this marriage. I want some nice springs of water. And he says, okay, you're right. You can have that too.
Anything you want, honey.
So, Otniel ben Kenaz, who we only saw earlier as this sort of minor conqueror who went out on a mission to conquer this particular city in order to win the hand of his relative's daughter, is now
Big shot.
big shot. He's now the hero of all the people.
But he's also a good guy.
Right, Otniel is a good guy. He is not described as a bad guy.
Man, if he got 40 years out of it, he's a really good guy.
Yeah.
So what's the significance of the 8 years under Aram, and then the 40 years? Is the 40 years like supposed to be like in the desert, or
Okay, well,
40 is a
40,
the
long time.
generation? 40 years.
40 is always the
generation.
expression for a long time. 40
Yeah.
days, 40 years.
40 is a round number for a large amount of time.
Isn't it like a generation? Isn't it what it used to?
Could be.
Wasn't that the
I don't
whole
know.
point of the 40 years wandering in the desert?
So the 40 years in the desert was...
So one generation would die off and would be a new
right,
generation.
good point. Yeah. I mean, it's also described as 1 year for each day that they... I think it was 1 year for each day that they went on the scouting mission also. But it is also said that, specifically, that it's until that generation dies and the new one grows up. Right, yeah, so good. So 40 years can be a generation. It's also a lot more than the 8 that they were being oppressed, which would seem to say something good about Otniel's leadership. That if the people messed up beforehand, they were punished by this foreign oppressor. He leads them back to fight him off, and he inspires them such that they're still on the good path for an entire generation afterwards. Do we have any details here? What do we know about him? What do we know about his fight? What do we know about his leadership?
Seems pretty inspired.
Okay, what does that mean? How? How do you know?
Well, God rested on him and made him powerful. Leadership is also fairly laid back.
How so?
Well, they don't mention anything active that he did after subduing Aram. Or he led the people more without, they don't say anything about the ruling, hence one would seem that it was rather pragmatic, technocratic.
Okay, so we don't know anything about what he did afterwards.
Right.
Which, if I understand correctly, are you saying that it could mean that he didn't really do much afterwards?
Well, he seems to have done whatever he had to do because things didn't go bad again until he died.
Okay. Okay, good point.
He must have been a good warrior because
Right.
he got Kalev's daughter because of the first war that he won.
Right.
Then he went against this guy and won the second war. So when it was needed, he was a good warrior, but obviously if there was peace for 40 years, he didn't keep fighting.
Yeah.
So is this all?
Makes sense.
Does he represent all the tribes at this point? It doesn't really tell us.
So it could be, because it just says
He says children.
Yisrael and Bnei Yisrael. So it could be that he is actually representing all the tribes.
But he's
'Cause,
from the tribe of Yehuda.
Yeah, he's from the tribe of Yehuda, which is interesting because Aram is
In the north.
all the way up north,
Right.
like all the way up here.
Right.
Yehuda is all the way in the south of Eretz Yisrael.
Right.
And so it would seem that Kushan Rishatayim was actually dominating over the entire country.
Right.
In which case, Otniel, coming from Yehuda, is leading possibly the whole country because it doesn't identify particular tribes.
Or
Right?
Or he
Or
just
what?
freed his little region from the thumb of Kushan, and Aram is still in charge of everything else. Doesn't really tell us.
Well,
Because that's a heck of a win.
right. But I don't know. It says, Vatishkot ha'aretz 40 shana. The land had peace for 40 years. Seems to me like it probably, when it says the land, generically, I think it's probably more than just his own local area. Also, because we'll see the next, in the next story, there are different people involved in different parts of the country. So if Kushan and Aram were still at work, these other conflicts wouldn't have cropped up. At least that's how it looks to me. Okay, so how does he become the leader?
God choose him.
God, how does God choose him?
The Spirit of the Lord came on him.
Spirit of the Lord descended upon him.
Okay, so the Spirit of the Lord descended upon him. Vatahi alav ruach Hashem. So if you look back on your commentary sheet, the second comment is from the famous commentator Rashi. Anyone here really like Rashi? Want to read what he says?
And the Spirit of God was upon him. Rabbi Tanhuma interpreted that he pondered what the holy blessed God said to Moshe in Egypt. I have seen the pain of my people. What are these two references to cite?
Can I interrupt for a second?
Sure.
So in Hebrew, what's happening here is, so this midrash from Rabbi Tanhuma is quoting what God says to Moshe in Egypt in the 3rd chapter of Shemot. Ra'o ra'iti et ani ami. I have seen the pain of my people. So the word, it doesn't just say ra'iti, I have seen, it's ra'o ra'iti, seen I have seen. Or as translated here, I've seen, yes, seen. And so there's a repetition in the language. So what does that mean?
What are these two references to cite? God explained to Moshe, I see that they will in the future make the mistake of worshiping the golden calf, and yet, nevertheless, I see and will act against the pain of my people. Oniel interpreted thusly and said that whether they are innocent or guilty, he must rescue them.
So what's the two seeings?
That he sees that they're going to worship the calf, and yet he sees that he's going to have to rescue them.
Okay,
Either way.
good. So I see that they're going to mess up, they're going to deserve punishment, and yet I still see the pain they're in. I still see the danger, I still see the suffering, and I have to fix that, even though they may have deserved it. And so, according to this midrash, as quoted by Rashi, Otniel, following along in this method or perspective,
Understanding.
decides that, okay, maybe the people deserve this to happen, but I still need to rescue them. Someone needs to do something to stop it, even if we really deserved it at the beginning.
What's his name mean, Othniel? Something to God, Othniel.
Oh, it's a
Othniel.
sign.
So Od is a sign if it's spelled with an aleph, and this is an ayin. Othniel, I can't think of any other examples of this root. Ratan, ayin, taf, nun.
A ton I will give.
So that's natan with a nun.
Yeah.
With an ayin,
That's the
it wouldn't
future
mean
tense.
that.
The L is God.
Etain, etain, ayin wouldn't appear there.
Ayin has reference to eyes.
It's
Not
assuming the
necessarily.
spelling
I mean,
is
if you want to get
standard.
really, really
But
like
here it is. He's talking about I've seen,
hyper-literal
I've seen,
about it.
and yet he's seeing God.
Okay, I mean, you could go that way if you want to be very homiletical about it.
Do we have another choice?
Yeah, I mean, if we can find another example of that root being used for something else, then we can figure out, oh, what does it mean as a verb? What does it mean as a noun? Otherwise, yes, we can get all as super, hyper, midrashically, minimalistically literal as we want and talk about eyes. Okay. So the way it's described in Shoftim, it sounds like Othniel is being acted upon, right?
Mm-hmm.
God raises him up. God's ruach infuses him, good word,
Yeah.
infuses him. Whereas this midrash quoted by Rashi makes it more about Othniel's own decision. Not that God is controlling him, but that he's actually thinking about how God has acted in previous situations, what God taught Bnei Israel about the proper response to this. In which case, the Ruach Hashem that infuses him, in a sense, isn't God like pulling his strings. It's Othniel himself recognizing
Mimicking even.
or mimicking good what God's will would assumedly be. Described here, maybe even learning Torah, as the rabbis who wrote the Midrashim would sort of idealize it. Of every idealized Jewish leader is infused with Torah learning. And so Othniel makes this calculation based on this discussion between God and Moshe, and he decides, okay, I need to do this now.
And he does.
And he does, and he wins.
Yeah.
And the people have peace and happiness and loyalty to God as opposed to the idols for 40 years.
And apparently to him, because once he's gone, it says that they go back, right? That's what you're
Right.
So,
Okay, so we're ready to go down around the cycle again?
so what was he doing? What was he doing to keep them on the straight and narrow?
We don't know. It doesn't say.
I know.
This is a very short story. And yet this is more than some of the other Shoftim that we'll encounter later on. This is very short. This is the first one.
And the
This-
other
So,
would be short.
Yeah. Yes, there are some that are shorter.
as a judge, okay, he judges both his people and he judges Kushan.
Okay. You can say that. Yeah, he judges that the people deserve to be rescued and that Kushan needs to be stopped.
And as a judge, they need to follow the laws, and he's going to set those laws up because clearly he's learned if he knows that God has seen and seen.
Good. Yeah. And yet we don't see anything that looks like a court case. So there could have been some kind of legislation or judicial activity involved in his leadership
In his 40 years.
in his 40 years, but it's not explicitly described.
Court cases are often very dry except for the lawyer.
Okay. Because lawyers are wet?
Not these days. We're pretty dry, actually.
I don't know what that means.
I'm
Okay.
not sure what Ed meant. He's just
I
trying to make
direct
fun
it to
of
my friend
lawyers.
Jeff.
Okay. Okay, so let's continue. So, Othniel ben Kenaz dies 40 years later. And what happens?
They go there.
Same old, same old.
They go back. Same old, same old. They do what's offensive to God. And so now we meet the next villain. So who's the next villain? Who does God let in to
Eglon.
Eglon? Eglon, king of Moab. Okay.
Also,
If you look on the maps from last time, you can see that Moab is on the other side of the Dead Sea.
Let's see.
Other side of the Dead Sea.
Okay.
descendants of Lot.
Yes, descendants of Lot. So our cousins,
Where,
who we are also not supposed to be getting into military conflicts with, according to the Torah.
You sleep with your daughter, all kinds of bad things happen.
Okay.
And I won't ask how you know that.
How many daughters do I have?
Well, I mean, it does say it in the Torah specifically that that's what happened with Lod. Okay. Okay, so what does Eglon and his people do? Who wants to read Pasuk 13?
Karen does.
And he gathered to him the children of Ammon and Amalek, and went and smote Israel, and they seized the city of palm trees.
So the city of palm trees is probably Jericho. It's described as a city of palm trees in other places.
So it's not Palm Beach.
It is not Palm Beach.
I want to be clear.
Right, sure.
East Palm Beach.
Right. Okay, continue, please.
So the children of Israel served Eglon, king of Moab, for 18 years.
Okay, thank you. So now we're up to 18. Last time it was only 8. This time,
10 more years.
10 more. It's getting worse.
Yeah, but I'll bet we have a big payback after this.
Okay, so let's see. So what happens? Do you want to read it? Or does someone else want to read it? You read a lot. If you want to pass it on to someone else, you can share.
Then the Israelites cried out to the Lord, and the Lord raised up a champion for them, the Benjaminite Ehud, son of Gera, a left-handed man.
Okay, thank you. So now we have a person with a description. An actual description. Something about this Ehud ben Gera guy.
Yeah.
So one, he's from the tribe of Benjamin. And he is left-handed. He's a lefty.
It's the only one in his right mind.
Nice. Okay. Okay. So Ehud ben Gera, he's from Benjamin. What does Benjamin mean?
Tribe of Benjamin.
Of my right hand. Son of my
So
right hand.
yeah. So the name Benjamin means son of the right.
Okay.
But he's not a son of the right. He is a son of the left. Just an interesting thing to notice. Okay, so he's the new champion, the new rescuer. And what does he do? Or, well, what are the people doing? We have to finish that pasuk, actually. So, the Israelites sent tribute to King Eglon of Moab through him. Because what happens when one nation dominates another one? I don't know if that happens nowadays. I'm not too knowledgeable in contemporary geopolitics. But in the ancient world, when one nation dominates another, they force them to give them stuff. You have to give us this much of your crops, and this much of your precious metals, and this much of your weapons, and all that. So the Israelites had to pay up to Moab. And as their leader, Ehud was responsible for bringing the stuff. Okay, but he's tricky. Let's see what he does.
He presented the tribute to King Eglon of Moab.
Oh, skipped a pasuk. A very important pasuk. It's okay.
So Ehud made himself a two-edged dagger, a gomed in length, about that long,
So according to what I've seen, a gomet is probably, at least some of the commentators understand a gomet to be the same as what we call an amma, which is this.
Elbow to.
Elbow to fingertips.
Short sword.
Yeah, a short sword. Short sword, long dagger.
two-edged. So
But two-edged because, I can't believe I forgot to bring in my picture of this, but I'll just have to draw it on this board over here. The typical sword in the time of the Tanakh was what we call a sickle sword.
Right.
And this was the handle, and this was the blade, and it was a slashing implement. So what does Ehud make for himself? A stabbing sword. It's sharp on both edges.
And pointy on the end.
Pointy on the end. Good. And this was unusual.
Yeah.
also one that long is likely made of iron rather than bronze.
Normal ones were those, the big slash and sickle ones. So nobody
Um,
design, I guess.
I don't know. We weren't so good at iron at this time. Like it said earlier, the Canaanites had iron chariots, and we did not.
To get hide it.
Later on, when the Plishtim are dominating the area, they actually don't let us work with iron at all. So I don't know what Ehud's dagger or short sword was made out of, but I don't think it's unreasonable to think that it could have been bronze as
High
opposed to
tensile
iron.
carbon steel. Folded 80 times. You got it from the Far East.
Yes, because
Probably
yes.
bones so you could get through the metal detector. I'm not sure.
Okay, so he makes a special sword, the short sword, which is sharp on both sides. And where does he put it?
Good
Right side.
under his right side, under his
Right under his cloak. Because when you draw your sword, you draw across your body. So if you're a righty, pull it from there. If you're a lefty, you pull it from
There.
there.
Is the point that most people would have, if they were looking, if it's the guards were looking, they would have checked the left side.
Exactly.
Not thinking he was left-handed.
Because they haven't been educated about diversity. So they don't know that some people are left-handed. Okay,
So happy now.
so what does he do?
Now, he presented the tribute to King Eglon of Moab. Now, Eglon was a very stout man. When Ehud finished presenting the tribute, he dismissed the people who had conveyed the tribute, but he himself returned from Peslim near Gilgal and said, "Your Majesty, I have a secret message for you."
Okay, so let's pause here. So what's the action so far?
He's presented himself as a very nice, servile individual.
Okay, good. He brought the tribute with these other people. They all leave. He goes back to Gilgal to cross the Yarden. And then he comes all the way back and he's like, "Oh, I have something to tell you. A secret message for you." What do you think Eglon was probably thinking at the time?
Where are my bodyguards?
I was thinking, wow, this guy is really a good collaborator.
Okay, so maybe he thought he was a collaborator. Maybe he thought that Ehud was bringing him some information about maybe some of the Israelites were working on a rebellion or skimping on the tribute. And he says it's secret.
Eglon thereupon commanded silence, so all bottom in attendance left his presence. That tells me he trusted Eglon. He trusted Ehud.
Right. Which could be sort of surprising, but
Yeah.
not necessarily. I mean, we don't
He
know
could
enough
also have
about
thought
the
it was a secret
situation.
about one of his governors, one of his agents.
Ah, interesting. So maybe... Okay, so you're saying that as opposed to it being... As opposed to Eglon thinking that Ehud is selling out his own people and telling him about some plan the Israelites are hatching, maybe he thinks that it's actually an internal threat in Moab.
Or someone stealing.
Or someone stealing. Like stealing some of the tribute?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Why would you trust this Israelite?
That's a good question.
Generally, they're really
There's a
trustworthy.
chunk of the story missing.
Right.
Because he brings this
Yeah.
tribute.
Right.
We don't know how long the party goes on during, for the tribute
Right.
and what's their relationship. Maybe they have more relationship going on than we're seeing here.
Right. We also don't know if he's done this before.
Right.
Maybe he's been the official head of the tribute-bringing delegation.
5 or 8 or 10 years.
Right.
Just make him comfortable until,
Right. He's a familiar face.
Could be.
yeah.
Maybe he's given him information before.
Oh, could be.
Good point.
Yeah, we don't know. We don't know
Story
the answer to any of these
gets richer.
questions. Yeah, it's all up for theorization or
We call that
extrapolation.
don't we call that midrash?
Midrash, yeah, that's what Midrash does a lot. Fills in the gaps. Other possibilities are, even without all of this imaginary backstory that we're coming up with, maybe it's possible that Eglon was just really confident in his bodyguards and in their procedures. If they let this guy in, then obviously he can't be a threat. They must have checked him for weapons on his left side, because obviously that's where everyone keeps their sword.
Or, since God's orchestrating the whole thing,
There you go. That
Okay.
keeps coming up.
then Eglon is the king?
Yeah, that's his name.
Is just a pawn, and God has manipulated his mind so that he trusts
He's going to reincarnate him.
Okay, so
Ehud.
okay, it's another good idea. Although I feel like generally in Tanakh, when God is manipulating the situation, it'll say so.
Well, it says that they cried out to him.
Right. Okay. So you're saying that God is manipulating not just the rise of Ehud to leadership, but all the steps in his victory.
Well, because that's when
Okay.
he answers, is when
Cool.
they cry out.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
Put another quarter in.
Eglon thereupon commanded silence, so all those in attendance left his presence. When Eglon approached him, he was sitting alone in his cool upper chamber.
Okay. He's sitting alone in his cool upper chamber. What's a cool
They
upper
have a second
chamber?
floor, like with air circulation, so the
Big windows.
yeah.
Okay, so some of the commentators describe it as an upper floor with where the walls were a lot of windows as opposed to solid structure, so the breeze could come through. He could rest, cool down. He also might need to cool down more than some other people because he was heavy. So this translation translates the word as stout.
Yes.
The word actually is bari, which in later forms of Hebrew actually means
healthy.
healthy, right?
Oh.
So,
Healthy, probably not.
Yeah, he probably was not so healthy,
Yeah.
but
Oh,
he was probably healthy in all ways other than strictly biologically.
Yeah.
In the sense that he's powerful and rich. He has all the food he wants. He has more than enough food and power and all this stuff. So he's doing pretty good. The fact that he's really, really big because of it is important for our story, but not necessarily seen as a negative to the people who look up to him.
Want me to go into the gory details?
Sure. Okay, so they're in the cool upper chamber all by themselves. And Ehud says,
And Ehud said, "I have a message for you from God." Whereupon he rose from his seat,
Okay.
reaching with his left hand.
wait, let's pause. Thank you. Okay, let's stop at each step. So Ehud says, I have a message for you from God. Eglon obviously has not seen any action film. Because if he had, he would probably realize that this is an ominous
I got a
statement.
message from God. Boom, God.
Right. So I don't know, maybe all the action films got it from here. Maybe Ehud created a cultural echo that has come down to us through the centuries and through various forms of storytelling. I don't know, but Eglon was not ready for this. Because what does he do when Ehud says, I have a message from God?
Nothing. He didn't do anything.
He does something.
Oh, he got up out of his seat.
He got up out of his seat. Why would he get up out of his seat?
The message from God is important.
Okay. So it's important. It's a message from God, and so he wants to
Stand up.
Who got out of his
stand up. Eglon gets up out of his
How do you
seat.
know it's Eglon?
Why does, yeah, I don't see that. I think Ehud gets out of his seat.
Why would Ehud be sitting in the presence of this powerful monarch who he is acting totally
Yeah,
servile
you're
in
right.
relation
It
to?
only says
and
that
the sentence before Eglon,
Eglon
was
is sitting.
Okay.
So then he raises from his seat. Okay, I see.
Okay.
To distinguish this is important. Yeah.
Okay. So it's important. He's showing honor and respect to God, to this message from God. So he gets up. This is a thing that people do. I'm sure we've seen
Sure.
similar things.
Is it possible that he was alarmed and got up, but he couldn't do anything about it?
Alarmed, like he realized something sketchy was going
He
on.
did see the action movies.
Oh.
No?
What does it say? Because it
He
says,
got up.
it just says he got up. It just says he got up. So, one source that I did not bring you here is that there are midrashim that see this as a positive action.
Him getting up?
Him getting up. He's told there's a message from God, and he shows respect to God by standing up. And so there are midrashim that say that this is why his family merited having a famous and important descendant, Ruth. Exactly. Ruth the Moabite, who ends up being the ancestor of King David. Okay, so tying together all these things, which is one of the other things that Midrash does besides filling in the gaps. So they identify this particular action of, look, wow, King Eglon respects God enough to stand up at the mention of God's message to say, okay, he was a really bad guy. He did some nasty things that we don't know the details of. But for this one praiseworthy action, he could have merited something so great as to be an ancestor of King David. That's not the one I brought you. I brought you something shorter and more practical and more action movie oriented. So this is from Tzudat David, which is a commentary from the 1600s or so, from Rav David Altshuler, who says it was appropriate to stand for that when hearing it. Okay, it's the right thing to do. He doesn't go off on this midrashic extrapolation about Ruth. And Ehud's intention was to distract him with standing so he wouldn't feel a thing.
But Ehud didn't tell him to stand.
Right, but Ehud told him, I have a message from God,
So Ehud knew he was going to stand?
according to this.
Okay, and how would that help him not feel a thing?
Give him
Well-
a big target.
Well, let's
16th
see.
century scientific.
Let's continue.
Okay.
Want to continue?
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Oh, you can, oh, okay. Must be getting good at this. Reaching with his left hand, Ehud drew the dagger from his right side and drove it into Eglon's belly. The fat closed over the blade, and the hilt went in after the blade, for he did not pull the dagger out of his belly, and the filth came out.
Okay, thank you. Okay, here we have the big dramatic gory moment. So let's imagine this. Ehud is.
Oh.
Now let's start. It's the upper chamber, the cool chamber. Maybe it has a lot of windows. Maybe there's some water there. It's just Ehud and Eglon. Ehud says, I have a message from God. Eglon, who is very large and heavy and has a belly big enough to engulf Ehud's entire dagger, gets up, and as he's getting up, Ehud pulls it out and stabs him. So Mitzudat David's description at least seems to me like the distraction is the motion. Like maybe Eglon has trouble getting up. I mean, he's definitely very, very big. And he's getting up. Maybe he's not concentrating on what's happening in front of him. Ehud pulls out the dagger, stabs it in.
So are they saying that Ehud was being compassionate? So he wouldn't feel a thing? I don't...
Oh, no, not compassionate. Tricky.
What's the difference if he stabbed him sitting down?
Because if he stabbed him sitting down, Eglon would see it coming.
Also, if the guy has a big belly, sitting down, it's going to be sticking out further. He wouldn't get to the vital organs as easily.
Oh, okay.
Not that I stabbed a lot of people in my career.
Okay.
It's a bigger target. All of a sudden, the target grows from a squat situation to a large
And also
situation. The target's very large. It's easy to hit your mark.
Set it up so you can tip over
Does that
and
mean he would?
Not that I've stabbed a lot of people.
crash to the ground.
He's probably stabbed as many people as I have.
Could be that.
Probably a few more.
Oh, okay.
So I have not stabbed anyone.
All right.
Me neither.
But
Me neither, actually.
Yes, you have.
but
With a little
but it could be that if Eglon is in motion and he doesn't see it coming,
Oh, well, that's this.
then it comes in faster and harder, and he gets stabbed deeper sooner. As opposed to if he's just sitting there and Ehud has to actually get to him and pierce his belly inside. Oh, sorry, wrong hand. Inside, in which case he would be moving slower, and
Got more.
And I think
or I could have just translated incorrectly, and lo yargish, maybe here it just means he wouldn't notice. Because literally it means to feel. But
I think according to the description, the two little edges you've got on your knife
Right.
with that little part that juts out,
yeah,
not there. It's one thing.
There's no
It's all the
guy.
way up to the hilt.
Yeah.
So
No, but it
it's
says there's something, the thingy, this part couldn't come out. I
Right.
think that was the whole.
He
point.
literally ran his whole fist in, pulled his hand out, left the...
okay. So you're saying the hilt, there's a handle, but there's no hilt sticking
no-
out on the
there's no
sides.
pieces.
Okay.
Well, there's no guard.
Well, I don't know.
No
what
guard.
this
That's the word.
means.
Thank you.
Yeah.
The half.
Not
Okay,
that I've stabbed a lot of
all my
people.
friends who are obsessed with like medieval weaponry are feeling very ashamed of me right now for not knowing these terms.
You remember the Society for Creative Anachronism?
I know some people.
Yeah.
Yes.
because the hilt would be the handle at that point. It's
Okay.
all the way in, swallows up. He doesn't pull it out. He probably has to flee at this point.
Actually,
Right.
guards on
Jumps out of the
knives,
second story window.
guards on knives are really on the early Middle Ages. Even the Roman gladius had no guard.
Ah. Okay. I wonder if they used it in the same way.
Stabbing sword.
Okay. Makes sense.
Was he surprised?
Okay. So,
The filth came up. What's that?
probably the guts or the, what's it
Think
called
about
again?
it.
The stuff in the guts.
That's good enough.
It's a weird word in Hebrew. Aparshadona. Some of the commentaries I saw point out that the beginning of the word, it looks like it might be some kind of weird compound, because parash, the beginning of it, is used as a term for feces.
Oh,
So that seems to be what it's talking about in general, and that he gets stabbed in the belly, and the contents of his belly come out. Okay, so Eglon is dead. The murder weapon has disappeared.
Well,
And Ehud is in enemy territory.
Time to boogie.
Yeah. So let's see. What does he do? Does anyone else want to read now?
Stepping out into the vestibule, Ehud shut the doors of the upper chamber on him and locked them. After he left, the courtiers returned. When they saw that the doors of the upper chamber were locked, they thought he must be relieving himself in the cool chamber.
Okay. Thank you. This is pretty smart. This is like back to action movie planning
How
here.
does he lock the doors if he's on the outside?
I'm not an expert in Bronze Age lock technology.
I thought I
But-
picked any locks.
Huh?
I thought I picked any locks.
All right, I've not picked many locks either, but if you have a lock system where the hole goes all the way through, and you have a key and you just stick it in, and it's a very simple key because it can't be so
Right.
jaggedly complex as ours today, and you just turn it, then
He has to have
But
a
it could be-
key.
No, or the bolt just would automatically drop when he closed it.
That's not what it says. It says he locked it. I can see him locking it from the inside. I don't, and disappearing out the second story window.
He took
But
the
I
king's
can't see
key.
him. I don't understand how
Took
he
the
locks
king's
the door
key.
and he leaves. Once you leave, the door is left open.
okay.
But somehow it's locked.
Shut the door and then lock
Maybe
it.
it, I mean, I guess the question is, Vayisgor daltot aliyad ba'ado. He shut the doors on him, against
Sneaking a knife, you can
him.
sneak in a lockpick.
Maybe. I mean, it doesn't say how he goes out. It says he left. Huyatsa.
I think he's got.
So
a lock.
it is possible that maybe he locked it from the inside
And went out
and
a
climbed out a
window.
window or something. Okay.
well, where's the vestibule?
So the vestibule,
Is that downstairs?
unclear.
Okay.
It's someplace between the cool upper chamber
So maybe
and where
he
everyone else
from the
went.
inside, jumped out the balcony and ended up in the vestibule downstairs. Okay, so
Okay,
a lot of different ways of
could be.
figuring this out.
Yeah. And the servants of the king assume
And he's
relieving himself.
Well,
in the upper chamber,
Right.
if,
and I guess he did.
right, if they, I don't want to get
Oh,
gross.
Right.
Go
right.
for it.
Right. So
Biblical growth.
so his
Well, I looked up the Parshtona. It's
nice. Okay.
Definitely.
definitely that.
Right.
So,
Okay. So they smell it.
Also,
So they smell the
crowd.
waste.
The king
Yeah.
lost it when he got stabbed. It didn't necessarily come out of the knife wound, which is said to be closed. He just lost it when he was stabbed, which is not unusual in a shock like that.
Oh, because the muscles relax.
Oh, maybe. Yeah. Oh,
Right.
oh,
That happens
okay,
when people
makes
die.
sense.
Okay.
That
So they smell it. They assume, oh, the king must be relieving himself.
the door's shut for
No
Nice.
one's invented bathroom spray yet.
Right.
They don't want to bother him.
Thomas Crapper doesn't come around for another 2,000 years.
Right. Okay.
Good point.
So they waited a long time.
And when he did not open the doors of the chamber, they took the key and opened them.
Okay, so the key can work from both sides.
Yeah, but you have to have a key.
Right.
And there their
Okay.
master was lying dead on the floor. But Ehud had made good his escape while they delayed. He had passed Pesalim and escaped to Syrah. When he got there, he had the ram's horn sounded through the hill country of Ephraim, and all the Israelites descended with him from the hill country, and he took the lead. Follow
Okay,
me.
let's pause here. Thank you. Okay, so we're switching scenes back and forth. We saw Ehud slip out. We then saw the servants of the king dilly-dallying and probably awkwardly waiting for him to finish what he's doing until they eventually realize that that's not what he's doing. Now we're switching back to Ehud. So he goes back to this Psilim place by Gilgal, where he had left the other tribute bearers from the beginning. And then he escapes further on to Seirah. And then what does he do when he gets there? He sounds the shofar. Because the shofar
Call to arms.
is a call to arms.
Right.
It's not just a ritual thing we do on Rosh Hashanah. It's a battle horn.
So at this point, we don't know if he collaborated this with anybody else.
Right.
See, when I get
Assume
back,
he
we're
did
gonna
because,
sound
assume he
the
did
shofar.
because
We're
the
gonna get
army's
ready to-
waiting.
If I get back,
Ah,
after I kill the king.
okay. So that's a good point. It seems like the army is waiting,
Yeah.
Right.
but we don't know for sure if the army was waiting as an army or if
It's called
he's calling up the militia and everyone's sounding their shofars all over the hill country, and everyone's like, oh, I guess it's time to go to war. Let me grab my sword that I hid underneath my bed all these years, and let's go. So it doesn't use the verb lehazrik, which means to muster the troops. But I'm not sure which way that goes. It could mean that everyone was waiting up there, or it could mean that this wasn't a organized military plan.
He left all the tribute people at Pisilim.
I think so. That's what it said, right in the beginning.
So if he leaves them there, he comes back, he says, I've done the deed.
Right.
And he sends them to the four corners and says, we're going to meet up at Sirah, bring all your people.
Okay.
Well, you'll know to do it when the horn sounds. And the town criers go out and spread the word.
Sounds good. Okay, and where are the people coming from?
The hill country,
The hill country. Which hill country?
Ephraim.
Ephraim. Okay, so let's look at our maps. Okay, so Moab is down here. Which is the best map here? Yeah, I guess the colorful map. So Moab is down here.
Ephraim's right on the-
Binyamin is over here in the middle, and Ephraim is right next door. So it says, Vayerdu imo b'nei Yisrael, the Israelites descended with him, min hahar, from the hill country. Which, but it doesn't say all the Israelites.
Right,
This
same
Israelites
discussion
coming
we had
from-
before.
Right.
We had the Judites before, and now we've got the Benjamites and the Ephraim.
Exactly. But it's only talking about the hill country in the area of Ephraim. So I think it's
Or people from other tribes were waiting if he coordinated it.
Interesting. Okay. That all depends on things we don't know about how coordinated this was beforehand. Whether he acted alone and then took the opportunity to inspire the people to join him, or whether this was a whole thing that he planned, or maybe someone else planned, and he was just the secret agent who put the plan into action. All those details are missing. Okay, but he gathered the people together in the hill country. They come down, and he is in the lead. And so what do? Now in Pasuk 28.
Follow me closely, he said, for the Lord has delivered your enemies, the Moabites, into your hands. They followed him down and seized the fords of the Jordan against the Moabites. They let no one cross.
Okay, so let's pause here. Thank you. What's their strategy?
Take all their cars.
Okay, so they take all their cars. How do they take all their cars? They come down from the hills, And they seized the fords of the Ardain.
Shallow points where someone could walk across.
Right. But so which side of the Ardain are they on?
They're still on the left bank, the west bank.
Okay, so they're still on the West Bank. They're still in Canaan, in Eretz Yisrael. And why are the Moabites there?
They control the area. That's
Okay.
the outposts.
Okay, so these are the outposts of the Moabite armies. And they don't want them to be able to get out and leave and go back to Moab. They want to destroy the army as opposed to let them run away to come back later. Okay, so what happens?
On the occasion, they slew about
10,000.
10,000 Moabites. They were all robust and brave men, yet not one of them escaped. On that day, Moab submitted to Israel, and the land was tranquil for 80 years.
Oh, twice as
Thank
many
you.
as 40.
Twice as many, right, exactly. Twice as many as 40. Although the period of time of the punishment was more than
18.
twice.
Yeah, 'cause
Okay, so
18.
the numbers don't have to match in ratio, but it is pretty impressive.
Yeah, 80 years.
80 years. 80 years thanks to a left-handed secret agent.
Assassin.
Assassin, yes. Does
Was he still alive? I mean, is that when he died after 80 years?
does it say?
Doesn't say that.
Does it say anything about what he did after this battle?
Nothing at all.
Nothing.
All right.
Okay, so
You don't know.
right, we don't know. So with Othniel,
But it does say the next line
Yeah.
is after him came Shamgar, son of Anath,
Right.
who slew 600 Philistines with an ox goad. So it doesn't necessarily mean that Ehud lived those 80 years.
Right.
Just Ehud was the champion, and then this next guy came up, and maybe
Right.
another guy came up after him. His name is just not mentioned yet. You know, so over 80
Yeah.
years, they probably had a number of champions and a number of Shoftim.
okay. Right, but we don't know anything about the rest of Ehud's story.
Right.
Like with Othniel, it said that
He died after 40 years.
right. It says that when he died, the people then started messing up again.
But this kind of looks like, if you read ahead, just
Yeah.
two things. He didn't die, but he retired,
Okay.
and Shamgar was there, and then when he died, they fell apart.
Right. Right. That's possible.
So it looks like Shamgar was still ruling, but he was still alive, but not.
Could be.
Was Shamgar a good person?
Yeah.
He's another champion?
Yeah. He's another champion. He's another Shofet.
Okay.
But we have an even shorter story for him than we did for Othniel in the beginning, because all we know about him is that he killed 600 Plishtim with a stick you use to poke oxen.
But it's within those 80 years, the previous 80 years we discussed.
Within
Possibly.
You know, he did like
It would make
10 a
sense
year.
to
He did
say
like
that,
10 a
but
year.
we don't
80
necessarily.
years.
It's not necessarily
killed
all
10 a year.
chronological. Oh,
They blamed Buffy.
okay.
Is this the only Ehud in the Tanakh?
I'm not sure. I feel like maybe I have seen another Ehud. There should be an easy way to do this. There's definitely there should be like a book around here someplace that
Has
would help us
names?
answer. Yeah, I mean like the Encyclopedia Judaica over there would probably, if you look up Ehud, it
Okay.
would probably have, hopefully it would have a article or a blurb about each one if there's more than one of them.
Come up with Wikipedia.
That's another good possibility. Or if there's a concordancia around here.
Concordance at home.
Oh, okay.
It's too heavy to
Okay.
You know, I have a concordance on my phone, but I'm not quite sure how it works.
Oh, wow. Cool. That's a good thing to learn how it works.
How to work it, well,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Let's talk to the cedar on the
It's like you
phone.
find a word like rock, and it tells you everywhere in the Bible.
Thesaurus.
It says, no,
Oh, the BDB, is that what that's called?
Now, BDB is a dictionary.
no, it's
BDB is a dictionary for very rare words. It'll
Right,
list
there
you
words, and it
every
tells
place
you where
it appears.
where they come up.
Yeah, but if
The
you but
concordance just
a
shows you
book that
wherever
has
any word
every word,
or
every word
phrase
appears
comes
as a
up.
concordance or a concordancia in Hebrew. In
Okay.
Hebrew.
My kids do it, I don't do it.
Oh, cool. It can be fun.
Way beyond me.
Okay, so
Okay.
so just in conclusion of this session, we've seen one exciting story of, I don't want to call it military prowess,
Intrigue.
because intrigue, where Ehud rises up to rescue the people in a action movie style plot of assassinating the enemy king, surrounded by two much shorter stories, one of which introduced this whole pattern with the first Shofet Otniel fighting off these faraway enemies who we're distantly related to and who should not be bothering us right now. And then followed by this even shorter story about Shamgar ben Anat, who we don't even know the context, the background, like what were the police team doing? All we know is that
dying,
he killed,
apparently.
yes, dying. All we know is that he killed 600 of them with something
single-handedly.
which single-handedly with something which is not actually a weapon.
A lethal weapon.
So we can fill in all the story as much as we want and theorize, oh, the Plishtim must have been dominating Israel and not letting us have weapons, and so Shamgar had to learn how to fight with something that was just a tool, like how karate was invented in Okinawa, something like that, if we wanted to, but there are no details in the story.
Aren't they the valley people along the coast?
Yeah,
Right?
Plishtim are on
And
the
with the iron chariots.
Cool.
Yes.
And since they're sailors, they
Right.
bring in technology from somewhere else. They're probably bringing them in from Egypt or bringing them in from somewhere, Crete or who knows.
Right.
You know, they're bringing in the iron chariots and they're
Right.
dominating the area. And this guy's a guerrilla fighter, and
Right.
he beats them with the femur of oxen.
Well, no, that's
Shimshon.
Shimshon does that later.
Right.
With
well,
the
but he's
sticks.
much later.
Jawbone
With
of
the
an ass.
bones,
He's
this
within
is
the 80 years, because after the 80 years, then it crashes and burns again. We got peace for 80 years. It doesn't say peace for 80 years plus this guy. It's peace for 80 years.
Oh,
So I think
no.
he's within the 80
So
years.
so Shimshon is
That's Samson.
later on in the book.
So let's review
Shamgar.
the four. So we went over 4.
We've had 3 Shoftim so far.
So okay, so the first one was
Otniel.
O'Neill.
He was from
mentioned
Yehuda.
And he killed who?
So first he conquered that city
Yeah.
of Kiryat Sefer in order to get married,
Yeah.
and then he vanquished Kushan Rishatayim,
Right.
king of Aram.
How did he do that? We don't know. He just got rid of him. He didn't kill him, right?
But just as he
was
went out
infused
to
with
war.
God's
Spirit.
Spirit.
He
Yeah.
killed Kushan, right?
It says
All
he-
it says
he
is that God gave him Kushan into his hands,
Yeah.
and his hand was stronger over him. He prevailed over him.
Okay.
So it doesn't say specifically that he killed him. He could have just kicked him out.
And the second was
Second is Ehud,
Ehud, who stabs
Eglon.
Eglon and kills him.
Right.
And then wipes out the
Moabite
armies that are
armies.
occupying Judea and Samaria.
Okay. And the
Okay.
third,
Is Shamgar.
who just beats 600 Philistines with a stick.
Yes, exactly.
Is Anak a giant?
Remember Buffy?
Anak is a giant, but this is Shamgar ben Anat,
Oh, Anat.
which is actually a Canaanite goddess. So it's sort of weird that
Could've been a demigod.
she appears in his name.
Yeah.
A demigod.
Huh?
He was a demigod.
I mean, the Canaanites may have thought of thought that.
So
But,
in each
yeah.
case, the champion
Right.
knows that the Israelites are not worthy, but they are worthy. The dual thing, and so
They're worthy of Rahmanas.
right. So they put themselves out
Okay.
to save them again.
Yeah. And it works.
So that's interesting.
They also free themselves.
Right.
Right? I mean, the guy who's leading the thing says, I've had enough of this.
Yeah.
And, he makes a
Yeah.
double-edged blade and
But at risk, because in God's perspective, God could see, God's timeless, so God could see that they were worshiping the calf, but he could see that they were worthy.
he
So
can
it
see that,
wasn't-
that they're worshiping
But these guys
Baal,
really don't,
but he can see that they're worthy.
Right.
And he can see that they're...
it's a risk.
Right. Good point. Yeah.
Interesting thing.
Yeah, it's a risk, but they're saying that this is a proper.
Yeah, but now it's
Perspective
become
to
a way of life.
Right. Right.
It's like, how many years are we going to get this time?
Exactly.
Oh, the
See.
next story's big.
Thank you. Yes, it is. The next story is big.
Is it?
Oh,
Story's big and
Stuff,
exciting.
man. You know your stuff.
one of my favorite stories.